Thank you very much, Wendy. Good evening, everyone. Yeah, as Wendy says, my name is Martin Dudley. I'm the chief executive. Of Thomas Dudley Limited. We started out as an iron foundry, and we've diversified into a number of different areas. I've been asked for the start of the evening to do a little bit of a promotion. We need your help. That's probably more the old people in the room at this moment in time. We definitely need the people's help as well. But at the moment, we need more people in the industry to be prepared to pass on their experiences to the young people. And so there are a number of training courses that are going on at the moment, and we do need tutors to pass their knowledge on. So as part of that, if you are passionate about the foundry industry and you wish to share your passion and knowledge, please will you let a member of the ICME know. We do, if I say we do, they do, the ICME, or part of the ICME, pay for your time and your expenses. So it is not, we don't expect it free of charge, but if you are prepared to pass on your experiences to other people within the foundry industry, and I'll certainly come back to this later on, we really would appreciate it. Do you want to come in and sit down? So I've been asked to give you a little bit of a history about Thomas Dudley, and certainly some of the technical challenges. Now, I'm going to have a technical challenge here because I've got all my notes here. I've got a microphone in this hand, and I don't know quite how I'm going to do that. I've also got some problems in that I've also got members of Thomas Dudley in the audience who probably know more about the technical issues than I do. So I've paid them to not ask any questions later on. So a little bit, yeah, I've got to keep walking over here, excuse me. So, who was Thomas Dudley? Thomas Dudley is the elderly gentleman in the picture over there. He was my great-grandfather. He was born in 1879 and was the eldest of 5 children. His father, Tom, was also a foundryman, and he worked for a company called Isons, which was a local black country foundry in West Bromwich. And the link with Isons is quite interesting, because if you go back through the history of Isons, they used to work with Bolton and Watt with the steam engines. And there is actually a reference to a Thomas Dudley who went to help install the steam engines, Bolton and Watt steam engines. So there is a link back to the Industrial Revolution, but I can't actually trace my family back that far. So I'll call him young Tom at the moment here, because his father was Tom, followed his father into the industry. His work took him out of the Black Country, and he went up to Liverpool to set up a foundry up in Liverpool in 1910. And that's where that picture on the left is, because I can tell that because my grandfather is the baby in the picture there. So that was taken in 1910 and was actually taken, they were living in Toxteth in Liverpool at the time. 1912, they moved back down to Tipton, and he took responsibility for running another iron foundry, and that's the one that you can see there on the right, and that was called the Bengal Iron Foundry, which was based in Upper Church Road, Upper Church Lane in Tipton, which I guess was quite close to the Triplex Foundry at the time. Tom was a charismatic man, so it was alleged he was only very small. He was 5 foot tall, and he needed blocks for the pedals of his bed to be able to drive the car. He kept horses and often rode to work. At the Thomas Dudley Foundry, there is actually still a manger in one of the garages where he used to bring his horse in and leave his horse there and feed his horse. Unfortunately, horses were his downfall, and that will come in later on. So he worked at the Bengal Foundry until 1919, and the letter on the left is a summary of some payments. He had a 5-year contract from 1912 till 1917, and in 1919 he was then paid up to date. I guess he wasn't paid a lot during the war. and he was paid a large lump sum. And with that lump sum, he decided in 1920 to set up his own foundry. And that is the certificate of incorporation there, which states the 11th of May, 1920. He bought a plot of land, or he rented a plot of land at the time from another foundry. It was called J.C. Holcraft, and that was on Grosvenor Road, Dudley Port. Holcraft's heyday, however, was long past. A critical report at the time said the whole premises are in a state of disrepair. Every interior is dirty, wants whitewashing. The whole of the woodwork badly wants painting, and the locks and fastenings generally need attention throughout. A bit like Dewport, really. Surveyors, Powell and Brown, peppered their report with phrases such as state of ruin, bad condition, bad order, very much worn and unsafe. And the then Thomas Dudley was paid a mere sum of £25 a year in rent. Tom used all his funds for the new venture and benefiting from the international expansion after the war. Times were hard. But despite these hard times, the company started to expand. And as such, Tom then decided that he was going to expand the foundry and bought a plot of land next to the railway line on Birmingham Road. The picture that you can see down in the bottom right is actually a picture of the old foundry. It's a bit difficult to see from here, but yeah, my great-grandfather is standing there with his bowler hat, and it gives you an idea of some of the types of products that we were producing, because those with good eyesight will spot manhole covers and frames in the background, and there's a large fire front at the top. So those were the parts that we were making at the time. So as I said, Tom invested in the foundry. The picture on the left, it's the plot of land on the Birmingham New Road site. It benefited, he put in mechanical charging at the time, and it benefited from power from the actual national grid. The previous one, it had all been generator. The foundry benefited from his visits over to America. His two brothers had emigrated over to America. And so in 1936, he took a trip, which was the Virgin Voyage of the Queen Mary. He went over to America to see his brothers, and he took his wife, May, and his mother, Mary, over. And one of the things it said in a letter back was that he was surprised to see that all the employees changed their clothes getting to work. They had lockers and the opportunity to have a bath or change into their home clothes to go home, which obviously shows what the state of the UK foundry industry was like back in about the 1920s and 30s in comparison to the Americans. Thomas Dudley's export strategy was also based around the cruises that first Tom Sr. and then his sons, Tom Jr. and Harold, would take. They each took it in turns to do a 3-month round-the-world cruise, and everywhere the ship stopped, that's where we should set up our agencies. So we've got agencies in Gibraltar, Malta, Cyprus, Dubai, Mauritius, back through Hong Kong, and then the Caribbean. No doubt all to be able to claim on expenses and put it through the business. Nice if you could do it at the time. In the period before World War II, another 5 bays where you can just see a small pink square there. We expanded backwards. And the properties and the business was put to use during the war. One of the bays was given over to British Small Arms, Shadow Factory at the back. And when I was there, I always knew it as the B. And the pattern shop was used to design and make rotor blades for Frank Whittle's first jet engines to go, which is the picture down in the bottom right there. These were being developed to combat the German fast aircraft mission system at the time, and in particular to chase the flying bombs. One of the ladies who worked in the shop at the time remembers the cheers that rang out on the announcement that the jet had reached the speed of 500 miles an hour for the first time. And the company was later visited by another famous aircraft designer and manufacturer, Geoffrey de Havilland. By 1945, there were 1,800 foundries in the UK producing 2.5 million tonnes of castings every year. a sixth of the British industry output from the white castings in which Thomas Dudley specialised, with products such as sanitary ware, cookers, grates, stoves, boilers, radiators, store furniture, manhole covers, gratings, signs, and lamp standards. Oops. Those are pictures from our catalogues dating back, probably not quite that far, but you can see in the top left-hand corner the cast iron toilet cisterns that we were selling at the time, and many of those were sent all the way around the world. And if those of you that do know a little bit about Thomas Dudley will know that we've also got a plastic injection moulding business. When people say, why did you go into plastic injection moulding? It was because of the cast iron cisterns used to crack, and therefore we moved into plastics. So just a little bit more about the family. So that's my great grandfather on the left with his wife May. In the centre there, you've got after he passed it down to his two sons, which is Harold on the right and left, and Tom holding the tray in the middle, and my father John and Ivor in the background there. So during the period of the war, not just problems obviously with production, but there were also problems in the family. Unfortunately, while out riding his horses in February 1942 in the war, my great-grandfather was seriously injured when the horse fell and landed on top of him. He suffered serious injuries to his body and head, such that he spent 14 weeks in hospital and was eventually put in a mental institution. While there, he managed to escape. And he managed to avoid capture for the statutory 2 weeks, which meant that when they did finally catch up with him in London, they weren't able to put him back into the mental institution without recertifying him. And the family didn't want him to go through that again, so they took him back home. But that caused problems, obviously, because he wanted the foundry to be run in the way that he wanted it. And in the time that he'd been in hospital, obviously, the two sons had been running it very, very differently. So at last, in 1949, Tom summoned the family to his home and announced that he'd sell the business, upon which an agreement was immediately drawn up. Tom died in 1955, aged 76, and obituary notice commented, to build a large, flourishing business by sheer hard work and determination is something which the whole temper and spirit of this present age makes almost an impossibility. Thomas Dudley was a man of iron will, who worked hard, if not harder, than those he employed. Tom was followed into the business by his two sons, I've already mentioned, so that was Tom Jr., another Tom, and Harold. Tom Jr., top right-hand corner there, slightly more playboy. You could have said more into wine, women, and song. He enjoyed going to dog racing, a number of greyhounds. He had a number of horses. One of those horses he sold to the Royal Stable, and the horse had the unfortunate claim that it was the one Prince Charles in one of his races. I don't know, remember, some of you might remember that Prince Charles did try and do a couple of races, and one of those, the horse stopped at the fence. Prince Charles didn't, and he was catapulted over. So that's a small claim to fame. Harold focused more on the foundry side and passed that on to his son, my father John, whereas Tom was much more interested in the plastic side and passed that onto his son Ivor. We start to get colour photos now. So the foundry started automation in the 1960s and moved from floor moulding to cold squeeze, and then in 1966 we started to invest in the first Allsworths, number one, followed by another and a new sand plant. Tom Jr. now particularly enjoyed these trips to Chicago, where the machines were made, although they were actually installed by Ruby Owen. It was unfortunately during a trip on Concorde in 1980 that proved to be his death, because 2 months after his visit to Chicago, he died from a deep vein thrombosis, which was said to have been caused by the flight. During the 80s, the company started to move towards electric melting and installed 2 4-ton inductor therm electric furnaces, and a third bay was installed for future. In the 1990s, the company saw a change in focus, and the company had built a strong reputation supplying the water industries around the country. But with cheaper products that were coming in from abroad, from China and India, we decided that we were going to move away from Thomas Dudley's own branded range into OEM castings, making castings for other people. And in particular, Thomas Dudley was very, very good at making thin section decorative work, because we were making brackets and we were making very, very thin section circuit boxes. And this was particularly suited, therefore, to make products like wood-burning stove doors, the stove cookers, ranges, and also pan supports for cookers. And so during the 90s and the noughties, Thomas Dudley Foundry became the go-to foundry for anyone wanting to source smaller volumes, not having to invest in larger stocks. There's a recognisable face on there, isn't there? Still, the foundry struggled to make a profit, and it was supported by the plastics and the business, at the plastic side of the business, until a new team of foundrymen, headed by Mick Cramphorn, turned the business around. In 2010, paving the way for a new round of investments. So we decided to invest in a couple of dieselmatic moulding machines. The new team coming in had experience of dieselmatics, and we invited Lenny Henry to come down and open them for us. It was quite ironic at the time, because we thought he was a local lad. Some people in here might remember, but he turned up 15 minutes late on the first occasion, and I got a call from his taxi driver saying, "Where are you?" And I said, "Where are you?" And he said, "I'm by Dudley Zoo." And I said, "We're not there." And I thought that Lenny Henry might have had a rough idea about where Thomas Dudley might be, but no, he didn't. So we had to talk him in from there. It was ironic also at the time, because he was just promoting Premier Inn. We offered to put him up in the Premier Inn, but he wouldn't have that either. So over a period of time, we changed our 6 Holdsworths, which were capable of producing at about 120 moulds an hour. They were replaced by 2 Deezers capable of producing at over 350 moulds per hour, using a third of the labour. We installed sound controls on 2 mills, heated auto pours on both lines, and the dressing times of simple castings were reduced. But the rates that the machines were able to produce at meant that rather than shedding labour, we reallocated it into other areas, meaning that turnover doubled with the same headcount. The problem that we had on the Birmingham New Road site is that we ran out of capacity. We had no room to expand. We were landlocked on all sides. So we couldn't put new buildings down. We've got a plastic injection moulding business on there as well. And we were also struggling with power. We couldn't get enough power to site. So at the time, I think we got about 8,000 kVA coming to the site, and most of the time we were well over that. We tried running a second shift, couldn't make it pay, and the request for more power resulted in a quote for £1.4 million to supply a new cable from Dudley Port, which ironically was where the previous foundry, where we'd moved the previous foundry from, and it was less than a mile away. So in 2015, we became aware that another foundry, the old Dewport foundry, was up for sale from the Shield Engineering Group. They had a tied foundry. They'd invested in buying a foundry, hoping to provide castings for themselves, but they couldn't make it pay. So on the site there was 18,000 kVA of power, 4 6-ton induction furnaces, and a Kunkel Wagner line, which was bigger than our machine on the Thomas Dudley site. So those are some of the pictures of Dewport, the Dewport site, when we took it over. It was in a total state of disrepair. So I've got problems of Dewport. That's not you, by the way. You were Dewport down in the bottom right-hand corner. But no, problems with Dewport. We purchased Dewport in 2015 and it had reached a nightmare. Being a tied foundry, it was making heavy losses, and these were hidden by unrealistic intergroup selling prices. Productivity was low. The employees were streaming out their work to maintain a level of overtime to enhance their pay. Does that happen in foundries? No. There was a level of capacity. There was plenty of metal capacity, but production wasn't sufficient, holding too much iron. The KW line was not able to run at full capacity because of constant breakdowns and poor quality levels. The foundry team tried to turn it around because it was a very, very different culture. The employees were not receptive to the Thomas Dudley management team trying to we called it, help them. One of the biggest issues was the low margin products. And when we bought the foundry, we agreed to fix the prices for 2 years, hoping with better operational efficiencies and lower scrap, we could reduce costs. But this was not the case. And over a period of 4 years, we managed to shed almost £6 million worth of work, and any that we did keep from Shield was at market value. We were able to use the sales force to sell the capacity of Dewport, which included core making and a larger box molding plant. As we continue to invest, we put in another Dixon moulding line. And at the time, Argo were closing down their foundry in Corbrookdale, and so we purchased their sand plant. A very good engineer helped us to install that. Thank you, Keith. That was when we came against the first problem of what we classed as the Dewport mould. Eagle 3, which was where it went in, was the name of an empty building which had, or looked to have, a very good, nice, flat concrete floor. However, as soon as we started to excavate, we found out that there weren't foundations under at all. Being a previous foundry, it was just absolutely ridden with pits and holes and conveyors. And actually, the top picture there was a conveyor that was still in place. It had just been covered over in concreted in. So in trying to put in a new foundry, when we start digging away foundations, the one on the left-hand side there, you can see down a sort of a 6-metre hole, there is another tunnel running off. So it was a nightmare. We'd got great plans, everything laid out, and every single time we dug a hole, we found a bigger one underneath. So we had to fill those in first. However, by 2018, the project was complete. And so we were able to almost start again producing on that site. Our purchase of Dewport, as some of you may know, actually helped the Institute. This is where we start coming on to some of the other pictures. In 2013, I'd been approached by a gentleman called Colin Parker of the Black Country Skills Group and asked if I would support foundry training. He'd done a skills survey and they'd identified that foundry skills in the Black Country was a core need. They put a plan together, got some money, came to see me and asked me for a letter of support to put together a new foundry training centre to be built on a site at Wolverhampton University. I refused to sign. As I believe that a bright new shiny foundry based on a foundry in the middle of a university was not going to be any benefit to industry at all. And I actually knew that Dr. Pam Morell was actually trying to set up at the time another foundry training centre somewhere else. But unfortunately, I think that fell through. The foundry that we were talking to hadn't got enough, the workshop wasn't big enough, I think, Pam, was it, that they couldn't do it. And as we had just bought a new foundry and we'd got an old disused office block, we did a deal with the university and they came along. We rented the land out to them. Well, for 5 years, we rented it to them at no value at all. But they demolished our foundry block and built a new foundry training centre on the land. Just a side to side, some of you may know that we tries to support employees as much as possible. And one of the things when we first moved into Dewport, we were approached by Lenny Henry's agents, who came along and said, "We want to make a film of a foundry. Can we use your foundry?" And he'd been around Thomas Dudley foundry, but at the time, I think it was a little bit too good to be showing to Thomas Dudley foundry in New Road as a foundry of the 50s, but Dewport was absolutely ideal. It was probably based more in the 40s, Dewport, than the 50s. So anyway, they came to us and said, "Can we use it?" And we said, "Yes." And they said, what would you charge for us to be able to hire out your foundry and to be able to use it? And I turned around and said, "Nothing. All I want is our employees to be the extras." And so as it happened, there's a TV program called Danny and the Human Zoo, if you've watched it, and some of it was filmed at Dewport, and there are a number of our employees who were extras walking around in the background. There's no picture on these ones, so I'll just whistle through. We had plenty of capacity, but we were not making profits, and so what we decided to do, the best thing to do, was to try and merge two foundries. We had two melt crews, we had two technical departments, two pattern shops. We were having to transport products between foundries and people between foundries that were less than a mile away. So we drew up plans to try and merge both foundries onto one site, which included maximising the melt capacity of 12 tonnes per hour at Dewport, planning to close down an airset foundry. We've got an airset foundry, we needed to close that down, relay out all the finishing shops, the warehouse, pattern shops, creating new welfare facilities. Logistically, it was difficult because while we had two large Deezers, one at the Birmingham New Road site and one at the Dewport site, and work could be swapped between them, the small Deezer was going to need to close down, and how are we going to do that? One of the easy ways was to try and build stocks, inform our customers of the plans, and ask them what their demand schedules would be. And for many of our products, we were able to get additional patterns and made a bolster on Deezer 3 to set them in. But actually, one of the biggest problems we had was the height of the roof, because in putting the new sand plant in, we had to increase the height of the roof, and that caused us a lot of problems. So this now we're starting to get into the moving of the sand plant from the from Thomas Dudley and the extraction system, creating welfare facilities, and a new warehouse and a new finishing shop. As Mike Tyson famously said, everyone has a plan until you get it in the mouth, and that's certainly how it felt with Thomas Dudley. At the first stages of the move, was to try and create more space, but it was the start of COVID, and so we really struggled because trying to get people to come in to do jobs, trying to get steel, it was an absolute nightmare at the time. We did, however, manage to create a new warehouse, a pattern shop, and employee facilities, and we had to create more car parking space on the site. We moved the CNC machines from Birmingham Road. We set about cutting new patterns for the small Deezer to be able to set them into a bolster on the larger Deezer. As with the installation of Deezer 3, previously, we still had problems with the mole that kept appearing every single time we tried to break new ground. But one of the biggest problems I mentioned was the increase in energy caused by the Ukraine war, which put steel prices through the roof, and our prices basically spiraled out of control. But again, another famous saying by Churchill said, "If you're going through hell, keep going." And so we did. So, what was the outcome? Deezer 2 was switched off the Birmingham New Road site November 2023, and all of the products moved across to Deezer 3 over on exactly the same Deezer machine on the Dewport site. And in Deezer 1, we found down in March 2024, earlier this year, we finally shut down Deezer 1. Nothing went to plan. We were meant to be down for 2 months, and we didn't actually start Deezer 1 up until August 2024. So 4 months, we were 2 months late, and the costs were, I won't say out of control, but certainly it was costing us a lot of money. And without the support of the plastics, it would have cost us a lot more. We're still currently, those people from Thomas Dudley here will know, we're still going through snagging issues at this moment in time. And we're trying to catch up with a large amount of back orders that have been caused by a 2-month overrun. However, this is still only phase 1, as we still plan to move the 3 4-ton electric furnaces from the Birmingham New Road site, the mothball at the moment, and then we're looking at replacing the KW line, either something similar, another large boxed horizontal line, or maybe move the mothballed Deezer 230 from the Birmingham New Road. We'll have to see how demand grows. We're also pushing on productivity improvements at this moment in time. So we're trying to use artificial intelligence to try and get more and more information to be able to feed us with up-to-date information so we can make more accurate decisions on how we're running things at this moment in time. I do believe that there is a future for foundries in the UK. But we have to make sure our offer significantly differs from low-cost competition abroad. Supply chains are in our favour at the moment, but this will change. And foundries in China and India and other parts of the world have the same access to technology. In many cases now they have the same skills as we do. But what I believe we have is experience. They do not have 4 years worth of experience in how to solve problems. And that is our challenge that we have in foundries today, is how are we going to pass that experience down from the older generations to the younger generations. And I believe that is what you are all here to think about today. My experience is designers and engineers, they know what to do, but in many cases they don't know why they do it. And they will copy our methods and they will copy our products. But then when they go to the next product, they will use exactly the same method as they did on the previous product. And they don't actually know why they've done it in the first place, why they're choking back winning systems. You'll have exactly the same choke on about 20 different products because they think that's the right thing to do. So what we have to do, I believe, in the foundry industry in the UK is try and make sure we pass on that 400 years worth of experience down to the young people coming through today and not just hope that they're going to pick it up by trial and error. There are lots of variables in the foundry industry, as many of you will know. Products, tooling, methoding, sand, processes, and metal. And all of these have to be right to make castings. While you can read the basics in the book, it's not easy to understand how all these variables are linked to each other and how casting can be made to appear a black art. What we also have to do, and it's one of the things I'm focused on at the moment, is focus on productivity. How can we get more out of the resources that we are putting in, whether that's labour, whether that's energy, whether that's materials. Low-cost countries tend to over-engineer their castings to make allowances for poor process control, and so we can compete with them by making lighter castings. Our pattern and process control can make castings that do not need further finishing operations, whereas low-cost countries tend to just throw labour at it. Unfortunately, there is not a lot we can do about high raw material prices. As you know, most of our scrap is exported, therefore increasing price. And energy prices, which in the UK are uncompetitive. All we can do is minimise the amount of energy that goes into each product. So all I can ask, those of us who have experience, pass it on. Our competitors are no longer the foundry down the road, and we must work together for the sake of the UK foundry industry. Just a few photos just to give you a little bit more about the background of Thomas Dudley. I'll also share some photos. As you know, we do a lot to support local communities and charities and our employees. We work with local schools to encourage young people to consider a job in engineering. And we regularly book tickets for our employees at pantomime, at Christmas, at the cinema. We have a Santa Day where our employees actually dress up as Santa. That's our managing director. Top left, not Santa, he's the elf. Funny story there is that on one of the Santa days they ran out of whipped cream, and Jason had to disappear up to the local Tesco's dressed like that to order 3 tubes of whipped cream. The lady in there didn't quite know how to take that. We also book out the Black Country Museum for an evening in the summer for a street party. Some things don't look quite so good in hindsight. We produced a monopoly set of Black Country pieces out of our zinc die-cast foundry. And our local MP presented it to Boris Johnson. I suppose it could have been worse. It could have been Liz Truss. That's it. I said I did be half an hour, so just over. Thank you very much for listening. I hope you found it vaguely interesting, some of the issues that literally go through a family business, how we have managed to keep going for 100 years. Hopefully this is the end of one chapter and the start of another, as we move back onto the Dewport site and continue to grow and continue to invest in the foundry industry. At that, I don't know, I'm passing back and saying I'm happy to answer any questions. I guess I'm the only thing now standing between you and some food. So if you want to keep them short, it's up to you, but I'll answer any questions that might have arisen. Anything at all? No? Yes, yeah.
What are your sort of main products at the moment? Obviously, it's traditionally been.
Well, yeah, we moved away from. So the question for the people online is, what are the main products that we're producing at the moment? The best way to make money is to design, make, and sell your own products. Obviously, within a foundry industry, that becomes more difficult because a foundry product, a casting, is normally part of something else. We do have our own range of manhole covers and frames. We lost a lot of that to China and India in the sort of 60s and 70s, but because they over-engineered them, the cost of those now is going up and up. All sorts of issues coming back over. So we have a good range of manhole covers and frames, which we have redesigned to take a lot of weight out. We do have a small range of brackets, casting brackets. We obviously don't do the toilet systems anymore, but most of the products that we make are OEM products, so general castings, engineering castings. We still do a lot in the wood burning stoves, so we make a lot of wood burning stove parts for companies like Arga, the Arga doors, parts for Arga, but then general engineering castings nowadays that are then machined and go up to some of the automotive manufacturers. Offshore wind, we make lots of parts for offshore wind. We make parts for the oil industry. One of the products we make is a cat's eyes. So if you drive down most major motorways nowadays, you'll see our cat's eye lighting up the road. Any other questions? Technical questions? Yep.
Why did you close the asset bank?
Sorry, why did we close?
Yeah,
Unfortunately, with the move on to the Dewport site, we didn't have enough room. There are other very, very good asset foundries around locally, and we had a range of products that we were providing parts for people like Arga, very, very large parts for Arga. But it was a small part of our business. If we could have moved it and if we could have fitted it in, we would have done. But unfortunately, the volumes were dropping, and at the time we just went back to the customers. We gave them 6 months' notice and said, we're not going to be able to produce in 6 months. We'll help you try and source somewhere else. But yeah, unfortunately, we hadn't got the room to do it.
So you're like what, fifth, sixth generation?
No, I'm still the fourth generation. I don't look that old. I would like to think so. I've got 5 children, three daughters of my own and 2 stepchildren. But when I joined the business at the age of 23. I went through a foundry apprenticeship. No, sorry, I didn't go through a foundry apprenticeship. I went through an apprenticeship with Rover and then joined the business. And the business was large enough at the time that I could still walk around and know just about everybody's name. But now, for a young person coming into the business, I think it would be much, much more difficult to go through it and inherit the business. And I definitely wouldn't want to encourage a young family member into the business unless they could actually get the respect of everyone in the business. I don't think that nepotism works nowadays. I would like to think that I worked quite hard with people in the room who probably saw me when I first started. And I would like to think that they would say that I've worked at least as hard as I must. Yeah, young people coming into the industry nowadays, I think you have to come through the professional route rather than the family route. So yes, I would always say that I want children to join me in the business. They've got to deserve that position rather than just feel they can inherit it. Any other questions? No, nothing online. All right. Yes.
You mentioned the 2-month delay in installation. These were the largest problem with the underground problem.
The underground certainly caused us a problem. We were told that one of the delays was we suddenly found out that we needed water on there and we needed to take the coil away over to Italy to get the coil redone. So that put a delay in. But when the coil came back, we suddenly found out that Clawson now wears the rest of the plant. So I think the engineers were sort of, I don't know, were thinking it was a bigger problem, but then they didn't get on with other stuff. And just the inherent moving of the plant, and then when you move it, you suddenly find that things break. And yeah, that was it. It was unforeseen issues in moving it, I guess. So you get the best plans, plans across again. And unfortunately, things come along, and it's just one thing after another. And I'll be honest, I mean, from Thomas Dudley here at the moment, we some days we seem to be taking 3 steps forward and then 3 steps backwards again. I don't know whether that's just inherent in the foundry industry, that you solve one problem and then something else goes and then solves. So as long as we slowly keep moving forward, but it was, yeah, I think it was. I'd have preferred, in a way, to have handed things to someone else and said, "There you are, there's the money. Please do it for me, and I'll come back when it's done." We didn't do that, so we had to rely on our own people to move existing plants, which it turns out that they always blame the previous lot for not maintaining it as they should have done before it was moved across. I've got some nods around the table. Yeah. Anything else? The guys from Thomas Dudley, do you think that's fair? Is that a fair comment, do you think? Have I missed out? Have I missed anything? I know I paid you, but you can ask questions. Okay. All right. Well, I think, am I allowed to say food is now served, or do you want to? Okay, I'll pass you over. All right. Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you very much, Martin. And just, I won't keep you away from food for too long, but in terms of the Cast Inspiration team, I hope that you can start to see the picture that we're trying to develop. The fact that what Professor Campbell was talking about this afternoon about engineering our processes so they deliver excellence. What Martin was saying about how that helps to position businesses, particularly with UK, because we can really lead what we can offer in terms of UK manufacturing. I have had the opportunity to work in foundries throughout Asia and the UK, and we still have a fantastic opportunity for our businesses. And then tomorrow, hopefully we'll take you to 2 other organizations who can help to reiterate what we're saying here today in terms of the future that we have within our industry. My final point before the food, because it does smell really, really nice now, is in terms of the ICME. I think the only thing that we haven't touched on in terms of the ICME is what I find as the benefit is the ability to network. It's the ability that when you're working within your organizations, and some companies that you will be sitting around today may perceive to be competitors, we're trying to break that down. We can be competitive organizations commercially and in terms of our markets, but technically and in terms of the operations and the improvements that we can all share together as an industry, we can share. And I personally have always found that really, really beneficial. So I'd just like to thank Martin again. Thank you very much. And I look forward to spending the day with you guys all again tomorrow. So thank you very much.